Don't drive by.
Yeah.
All right. We still have a few minutes, so I'm getting started. But we had our dive miss today. We go with Santa on Isla Mirada Dive Center. Ho, ho, ho. We're going to be doing that again next year. So if you want to get pictures, for those of you that live up north and want everybody to get really jealous, we'll probably do it during the summer so you can be in your like swimsuits and no thick wetsuits, and then save it for your annual Christmas card. I know, I think I have some people in here from like Chicago or North Dakota or some way too cold. Okay. So anyway, we're going to be doing that again next year. So give a big shout out to Isla Mirada Dive Center. We also have got a full Immerse Yourself schedule for next year on the third Wednesday of every month. That's right. We have fabulous speakers who come in. So make sure that if you're visiting and you're back in town, if you plan it the third week of the month, we have fun stuff going on. So we invite you to come back. I got some members that are in the room. If you're not a member, we encourage you to become a member. We're going to be doing our program tonight virtually as well as in person. So everything, our memberships help support fun stuff like this, dive miss, treasure treats, and community outreach. We also want to thank our sponsor for tonight, Mark Sharkey Alexander, and Triton Circus Supply Diving. He does Mark 5 diving up at Jules Undersea Lodge. So for anybody who wants to do the vintage hard hat diving, raise your hand. That's the guy to see. You know anybody who's crazy? That's the guy to go see. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And he's also on our board. So thank you very much. We have our founder, Dr. Sally, with us as well tonight. So I greatly appreciate not only our members, but all the extra work that our board does. In fact, Bob is probably still cleaning up. Thank you. No, you're good. You're good. So thank you all. Everybody also got to see Salvaging the Deep. For those of you that are on Zoom or for out there, it will close December 31st. And then in January, we will open Dive into Art, Fantastic Fish of Florida, which our January speaker will be Reef up in Key Largo, and they're going to be talking about sustainability and fishing and some of the projects that they do. And a lot of that citizen science. How many people are divers? There's a fair amount in the room. So there's a lot of citizen science that you can do, helping, the reef, taking surveys, helping plant coral, plant sponges, and things like that. And if you're not a diver, learning about looking at menu options and sustainability and where things are sourced. If you have an aquarium at home, you want to make sure that all that aquaculture is sourced in an ethical manner, and that'll be in the next Dive into Art. That'll be some of the educational messaging, as well as student work from Key Largo to Key West, and our wonderful art field of the Purple Isles will have some fantastic art up on the exhibits walls as well. And for those of you, how many of you saw this in the newspaper? Oh, I still love reading print. I might be showing my age, but I love the print. How many saw it on Facebook? Okay. E-Blast, where? On both? Okay. How many of you got E-Blasts from us? You get our newsletters? All right. How many because somebody else told you about it? Word of mouth. Okay.
I know somebody.
You know somebody.
You told me to show up.
Yeah. I did. All right.
They're all really good.
All of them. Okay. We'd like to make sure our messaging is getting out. So if you didn't see it and you just happened upon it, let us know, because that means we need to target some other area that we might miss. And we want to make sure that everybody gets to be involved on our free community outreach programs. So tonight, that kind of brings us to tonight. Elena and I have been friends for years. She's a great supporter of the museum and the environment, just as a human being in the Keys. But she's also a park ranger up at John Pennekamp State Park. And whether you snorkel or dive this Christ statue, we're going to learn how it got here. I didn't know until I came to the visitor center that there's another one in where you're going to tell us where. You're going to tell us where it's from. So I will leave it to you, and thank you for being with us tonight. And if you have any questions, do you want to hold them for the end or as we go through?
I'll take questions as we're going through.
Okay, and if you're on virtually, type them in the chat. Julia's going to be monitoring it, and then she'll come in and she'll share those questions as well. And also, if you're on, because we're recording this to put on our YouTube for those that can't be here, let us know where you're from, how many people are with you, so we can know our outreach as well.
And if you do take any questions while the presentation is going, be sure to repeat them for everyone on Zoom.
There you go. Is everybody ready?
Yeah.
All right. Dive on in.
Okay. So I'm Elena Muratori. I actually have the title of Park Service Specialist now at John Pennekamp Coral Reef State Park and Dagny Johnson Key Largo and Pennekamp State Park. But first thing I'm going to ask is if you have a cell phone, if you would please mute it, put it on vibrate. I'd appreciate that. It's really fun to be here tonight. I see so many faces. I see volunteers. I see friends. I see people who are going to be my friends, right? So thank you all, people from our Friends of Pennekamp group. So thank you all for coming. And I know there's quite a few people on Zoom who told me they were going to be joining in from all over the United States and maybe other countries too. I'm not sure. So thank you all for being here. And I am honored to have this opportunity. Lisa and I were talking about this just as on the side about 10 months ago. And she said, let's do that. Let's do it in December. I said, okay, that sounds perfect. So tonight I am going to tell you a little bit about the history of the Christ statue and how it got here and some back stuff. I have way more information than I'm going to present tonight. So I welcome questions. And if you want to know more after, you can get my email and we can talk further. I do like to start out with the Florida Park Service mission, which is to provide resource-based recreation while preserving, interpreting, and restoring natural and cultural resources. So everything we do is towards that end, whether I'm giving a talk or cleaning a toilet, it's all to that end. And I do happen to manage the volunteers, and thank you for so many of you for showing up. Let's see if I'm doing this right. Okay, so the Christ of the Deep is now an iconic statue associated with John Pennekamp Coral Reef State Park. This photo was taken by one of our former park rangers. I got a nice shot of it. I'm gonna do little pieces of this. So here's the sculptor Guido Galletti, who created Il Cristo degli Abissi, the Christ of the Abyss, which rests in the Mediterranean Sea. How that came to be was that there was an Italian inventor and the first Italian to use scuba gear to dive named Dario Gonzatti. While he was diving, he happened to die during an underwater expedition in 1947. So during his funeral, the legendary Italian diver Giulio Mercante left the ceremony to go dive under and meditate underwater. And at that moment, he had an idea. He thought, wouldn't it be something to create a statue and have a place of meditation and prayer in the sea by having the statue of Christ underwater? So he's actually the one who commissioned Galletti to create the statue in Gonzatti's memory. The bronze for the statue, it's sort of like a big community thing that happened. They collected old maritime metals and ship components. People donated all sorts of pieces of bronze, including rotors from World War II submarines. And thus that was used once the form was created to cast it. There's also a second cast in Grenada, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And the third bronze cast is our Christ of the Deep at the Key Largo Dry Rocks. So I will make the distinction. Christ of the Abyss is in the Mediterranean. Christ of the Deep is in Key Largo. So when this is the statue in Italy. When it was originally placed underwater, it was quite an event. You can see this is a big parade. It's an 8.2 foot bronze statue, and it was put off the coast of Italy on August 22, 1954. See, we had the blessing by the priest. We have an Italian officer in the foreground there. Boats all lined up for the event. And the Italian Navy even took part of the placement of the statue underwater. Il Cristo degli Abissi, as it's descending into the water here, and this is the picture of it descending in the water in the Mediterranean. Sometimes you'll see it portrayed as the one in Key Largo, but it's not. This was near the spot where Gonzatti had actually died, and it was subsequently dedicated to the memory of Mercante. It's a representation of Jesus Christ with open arms stretched toward the sky, offering a blessing of peace. You can see everybody wanted to be part of this. All these Italian spectators joined the crowd. And I still want to try to figure out if I can find out who this Italian diver is, if he might be, Mercante. But anyway, he has a commemorative wreath at the sinking event. The location of where the statue is actually in approximately 50 feet of water in the Liguorian Sea off the bottom of San Frutoso Bay. So it's near Portofino. And that's the exact thing. You can, if you Google it, you'll find the exact point of it on a map. I didn't bring that. At the dedication, this prayer or whatever was said, he will descend into the green, silent depth of the sea and remain there to protect the living. The dead shall no longer be lonely. His carpet will be of soft algae. His naves and columns, that's parts of the church, will be the pillars of the earth sunk into the great cerulean depths. His flabella, which means fans, will be waving foliage of the pine trees hanging over the Liguorian Sea. Ships and phantoms of ships will crowd around him, living men and dead men. The shadows of all who lost their lives in the sea will be present without discrimination of nationality, blood, or color. So this is a picture of the second bronze sculpture cast from the same mold and placed on the Carenage Promenade on the shoreline in downtown St. George's, Grenada on October 22, 1961. So before our statue. It was a gift of the Navy of Genoa, Italy, for assistance in rescuing the crew of the Italian vessel MV Bianca C, which was destroyed by fire in the port of St. George. So there's also a copy of this sculpture underwater in Grenada at the Grenada Underwater Sculpture Park. So they have it, the original is on land, and then they put another copy under the water in Grenada for people to dive and see it. So the third statue, our statue, the Christ of the Deep, was donated to the Underwater Society of America by the skin diving gear manufacturer Egidio Cresci in 1962. So when you see Cresci equipment, that's who donated this to America. The statue was transported from Italy to New York Harbor and then went on to Chicago. Here it is at the Navy Pier in Chicago. So you're going to hear, it was a very long trip under different types of transportation, multiple. This is a photograph of, let's see, The man with the dark hair and the one on the left is Gabe Spataro, who I had the pleasure of meeting. And Carl Hauber is under the umbrella. They were both of the Underwater Society of America and were instrumental in having it get here. And you can see here, a statue of Christ of the Abyss. So you'll see these lots of times. I don't know if it's a translation thing or what, but where it gets called the one in Italy when it's the one here in the US. I have some documentation here just to use it as background. You can't read it, but this was correspondence of L.B. Lewis in a letter to his son Bill. And his son Bill gave me a copy of this letter when he came by. It's been opportune for me to be at the park for so many years and get to meet all these people that were part of this. Mr. Lewis was the owner of Chicago Haulage, and he transported free of charge the Christ of the Deep from the Navy Pier to the Palmer House on August 17, 1962, the day before it was to be presented to the Underwater Society of America. Let's see. It was around 2010 when Bill Lewis actually gave me this letter near the 50th anniversary of John Pennekamp State Park that I was part of organizing. Here's a picture of the Christ statue in the Palmer House where their meeting was held and it was presented officially. Now, when Gabe Spataro came to Pennekamp, he was able to help me. Even though he's legally blind, he knew this photograph, so he could tell me who was in the photograph. This is the Grand Ballroom of the Palmer House in Chicago. And left to right is Dan Bellack, Eddie Allen, who was a band leader for the event, Gabe Spataro, and Carl Hauber. Let's see. After the dedication, the statue sat in storage for many months, almost a year, actually, I think. At least it was close to a year, if not just over a year. While discussions were taking place, where was this statue going to go? Several states were making offers. They wanted to have this. Yes, and
Didn't his letter say it was going to go to Florida?
his letter did. So not everything I'm doing is sequentially. So I'm telling you.
But that's point he did.
Yeah, So there's kind of this back and forth that I'm doing, but I can give you a timeline if you want. So the then Florida Senator Spencer Holland and John Pennekamp and members of the Florida Board of Parks recommended the board offer Coral Reef State Park for a place for the statue to be. And at the Florida Board of Parks meeting on February 18, 1962, Spataro actually appeared to make the request the statue be placed at Pennekamp. It was finally approved by the board at its October 1963 meeting. And I'm going to tell you more about this journey, but after a difficult journey made possible by the efforts of many sport diving associations, it finally made its way to the park in the spring of 1965.
Wow.
But I'm going to get into more detail about it. This is a very important document that I'm always willing to share any of this with people. Eva Mills Dunlap wrote a letter to then Park Ranger Larry Gavagni, who went on to be a manager and is now retired, saying that this was an article that was published in many dive magazines, but she gave the park permission to use information from it for presentations. We actually made flyers and handouts at different times for people to know more about the Christ of the Deep. And she does say in her letter, it's the Christ of the Deep, not the Christ of the Abyss. So she describes the process of how the statue came to be located at Pennekamp. As I had said earlier, after its presentation to the Underwater Society of America, it sat in storage in a warehouse in Chicago. Some of the states' diving councils that were interested in it were including California, Illinois, Michigan, but the sites were not good sites for the placement of the statue in most people's opinions. Let's see, I already told you that the Board of Parks recommended they offer to place a statue. So for nearly a year, the 1,102-pound statue remained in the O'Hare Field Pan American Freight Terminal at Chicago. There had been no charges for the transportation of the statue to the United States, except for $25 for insurance. But all these companies and individuals donated the cost of this transportation. But there wasn't any money now to transport it to Florida. So in late 1963, the Orlando Otter Diving Club members formed a Ways and Means Committee. And Miss Vera, spelled with an I, V-I-R-A, Steinmeier, was a naval reservist and appointed as the committee chairman. This was a stroke of luck. She had connections. So she appealed to a Naval Air Reserve training flight to stop in Chicago and bring it to Orlando. So you see, fly, boat, trucking a little, flying. So went to Orlando. There it was displayed at Christmas time at the Colonial Plaza Mall. And so people were all just delighted to see the statue, but it still wasn't in the water, wasn't where they wanted it to be. After being displayed there, it was trucked on January 5, 1964 to St. Petersburg, Florida. And there, several diving clubs along the Florida West Coast organized it be displayed at the $1 Million Pier in St. Petersburg. Then another truck drove the statue to Riviera Beach, in Palm Beach County, where the Palm Beach fin divers made arrangements for its display at the Commerce National Bank. So this Christ statue really has been traveling. Were you there?
I wasn't there, but I've been there. It was a keep built for many years.
Cool. Then finally, on February 4, 1964, the statue was transported to Hugh Taylor Birch State Park in Fort Lauderdale for storage. So during this time, several organizations were trying to raise money, financial support for how were they going to get this to Pennekamp? How was it going to be put underwater? Where were we going to come up with this money? They did get donations. They got over 50,000 pounds of concrete to make the slab base for the statue. And that was donated by Mall Industries, which was a company in Miami. And I have some combined information. I think they're probably both true, rather than saying one is true and the other is not. Harry McCabe, who I also got to meet him, was president of the Southeast Diving Council, and he got that donation. But I've also heard, since the mall industry was in Miami, that John Pennekamp had influence to get the donation. So it was finally transported to by the state of Florida to John Pennekamp in the spring of 1965. Now, there's a little piece that I'm not sure of, and I have to. History is how it gets told, right? And I've learned that after being a scientist for many years and then doing history and going, oh, some people have this piece of the story and other people have that piece of the story. But I also heard that it might have been stored for a time in the Keys property. I just heard it. I have not. So there's places where, did that happen too? I don't know. So during the early months of 1965, the concrete slabs were created, including donations of work and materials, as well as park staff support. The final base was 42,000 pounds of sunken concrete. And as I said, I did meet Harry McCabe in 2013, and he corroborated a lot of this information. I've got notes. Now, unfortunately, a lot of my colleagues who preceded me, I was a librarian. I know when you cut out a newspaper article, you write where it's from. So the best I could come up with is that this was circa 1962 from the Miami News. And another part of the story of Christ of the Deep is where along the reef was it going to be placed? So what's the best spot? Where are we going to actually do this? So the first park superintendent of Pennekamp was Ellison Hardy, and he met with John Pennekamp at the Miami Herald. Pennekamp, for whom the park was named, was a driving force of the creation of the park, actually a driving force of the creation of Everglades. And so he was very influential in things that went on at the park. He told Hardy to find a location along the reef line with the assistance of Sandy Sprunt, who was a member of the Park Advisory Board and worked at National Audubon Society's office in Tavernier. So some of you may know the Sprunts.
Yeah,
So,
great, great people.
yeah, so that's part of the story I didn't know before I started delving. So along with Hardy, along with the assistant park superintendent, Johnny Johnston, said, Pennekamp told him, look for the best location without giving any regard to special interests. Now, this was quite a challenge because there were a lot of special interests involved in getting this set. So, of course, they did many dives in several locations with great discretion. And a final location was settled on at Key Largo Dry Rocks on the seaward side of the reef. The chosen spot was a beautiful box canyon. It had a depth of 27 feet, open on the southeasterly side. The canyon rose up to the surface to one of the most beautiful coral formations in the park. There was a huge brain coral on the northerly side. And it greatly enhanced the visual effect when the statue was placed there. Of course, it doesn't look like that today, I'm sorry to say. But there's still a lot of beautiful coral around Key Largo Dry Rocks, but we don't have those big boulder corals that we used to have. Oh, I must have written something twice. During the search for the final location, the statue was temporarily placed on a concrete slab on the southeasterly side of the bridge at Pennekamp. Any of you who know that bridge that we have going out to Far Beach? And when I came to the park officially in 2001, you could still see the slab in the mangroves. It's still there, but it's covered by mangroves now. But that was a way that all park visitors could view it before it went out to sea. There's a picture of it up front and close.
Yeah.
What's that?
So clean.
Yes. Well, we'll talk about that a little too. As recalled by then park ranger Don Scott, who was a project crew member and a graduate of Coral Shores High School, constructing the base area on the ocean floor was accomplished with everyday hand tools. These included carpenter's hammers, pry bars, levels, and sledgehammers, all used underwater to clear and level the site. Form was created from plywood and to contain the concrete as much as possible while making the foundation square and level as possible. Now, you guys got to go imagine back to the mid-60s, 1965, and the quality of the boats, the quality of the engines, They were using, to haul the concrete, they were using a 17-foot and a 21-foot boat with 55 horsepower for cycle engines. These vessels took the ocean chop harshly, and the operator had to be careful when slowing down because the backwash, not to bring water over the stern. And as you can imagine, the outboard engines were nowhere near the reliability and economic performance of today's outboard motors. So needless to say, it was somewhat treacherous using this equipment to hand deliver 50-pound bags by diver to the ocean floor. 50-pound bags of saccharin. Just a little anecdote. Ellison Hardy, the park superintendent, noted that there was a grouper that started hanging out and watching this whole process and sort of became the mascot of the setup for the Christ statue. When that part was completed, the rest of the base was placed in wedding cake style. Each tier was created at the park base separately and then put on a boat, brought to the site and put in place. The statue itself was inverted on one of the concession boat hoists, and filled with concrete to make it be sturdier. I'll just mention this now rather than go later. One of the things that happened is after the statue was placed in August, in September, we had Hurricane Betsy. And when they went to check, the statue was in place. It did not move. So that was a good test of time, of its strength. A barge, just for those of you who might be interested in history, a barge and dragline with an operator was rented at a good price from Alonso Cothran Construction to transport the base of the statue to the site. So finally, on August 25, 1965, the Christ of the Deep was finally lowered into the sea in 20 feet of water at Key Largo Dry Rocks. At this time, this was within the park boundaries. When the park was created, 1959, 1960, and I say that because parts of it were created in 1959, we officially call 1960 when it was dedicated and named after John Pennekamp. When it was, the boundaries went all the way out to the continental shelf because it was declared a park by President Eisenhower. So it was a national thing. Actually, I'm going to add some history in here. Actually, when the park was created, they were first trying to have it be part of Everglades, but it was making it impossible for the Everglades process to go through. So they pulled out preserving the coral reef from the Everglades park. So at the time that we were created, it was a federal proclamation or whatever that made it, but it was given to the state of Florida. What happened is that a lot of people feared their fishing would be, their commercial fishing would be hurt, that because this park was created, then they wouldn't be able to have their livelihood as fishers. And so they said, hey, wait a minute. State parks can only go to state waters 3 miles out. So on December 18, 1975, the park's boundaries came into the 3-mile line. But the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary, well, it was a different name then, but that was created. So there actually was a lot more protection going on of the coral reef. But so now officially, the statue is not in park waters, but it is still was a gift to the park. It's considered, it's associated with our park. And here is just I like having this picture of a diver viewing the statue in the late 1960s or early 1970s. It gives you an idea. What's that?
Is that Steve Franks? What?
I do not know. It's just a photo that we have in our library, and some of these I don't really know, except that it's been in our library forever. It may very well be Barbara. So back when this photo was taken, circa 1985, you were allowed to clean the statue. To do so in present day would require approval from the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. I'm gonna say one more thing about that up there.
Elena,
Yes,
so when you say you were allowed, were park divers cleaning it regularly?
I don't know if it's regular, but park staff did go and clean it.
And didn't it have brushes attached to it?
I don't know about that. Sorry,
And probably at different times
maybe
because it would erode away, but divers could,
could just take a little
Yeah.
lick out of it.
and it was okay.
That's where
It was
we need
okay.
to have, Captain Slade or somebody in the
Yeah,
audience, or Stephen Frank.
Yeah, right.
So as part of the 50th anniversary of John Pennekamp Coral Reef State Park, and it was the 75th anniversary of the Florida Park Service, one of the events that we held at the park was park manager Pat Wells diving with oceanographer Sylvia Earle to place a wreath on the Christ of the Deep. So you can see the wreath here in the newsprint photo. And that was on the anniversary date that we use of December 10, 2010. We're going to have our 65th birthday next year. And this is a modern day picture of Gabe Spataro. He has passed away now, but he was the one who was tasked to bring the statue from Italy to Chicago. And he was finally able to visit the Christ of the Deep in its permanent resting place in 2013 and 2014. And I did get to meet with him at that time. And as I told you, I got to learn more like the people who were in the picture. So that was a momentous time. And if you Google it, you might find there's a interview that a reporter did with him. Here is a picture it's a replica that's at St. Justin the Martyr Church at mile marker 106. That's right out in front of the church, where the interior decor of the church was influenced by the coral reefs of John Pennekamp Coral Reef State Park. And they have a little church pamphlet, or they did, I have a copy of it, that stated that. So originally the statue was created and donated to honor those who died at sea, but it's come to have a whole lot more meaning, not just for the park, but the whole Key Largo community. Here's a more recent photo by Daryl Duda, who offered me this. And you can see there's a lot of growth on it. Daryl also has been a volunteer at our park in the visitor center and aquarium. But while some people may think that the statue should be clean, I kind of like how the art of nature is blending with this human created sculpture.
Me too.
That's just me personally. I kind of like it. So that comes to my end of the talk about the statue, but I would like to say volunteers are an important part of the operation of the Florida State Parks. I used to say volunteers were the icing on the cake. They are now the cake. We cannot run our parks without our volunteers, of which there are many here tonight, both here and on Zoom, and I thank you all for that. But you too might have skills that we could use at the park. We've got 2 or 3 people here who are on our dive team now for when we need to do cleaning in the aquarium or go out to the reef and do something. But you might be a photographer. You might like talking to people and be in the aquarium. You might want to help our friends group raise funds for the park and get involved with some of the events that we do for the park. There's lots of things. You could work as everything a ranger does, a volunteer can do. We've got volunteers here who help in the toll booth, volunteers who help with the shop, volunteers who go and clean up trash all the time, a constant thing from the ocean. So it's fun and rewarding, and you will make a difference. So if anybody wants to do that, I happen to be the volunteer manager, and I'd love to volunteer. I'm a volunteer in other places in our community because I believe in the volunteer spirit and being service to other people. And then I can't go without saying the Friends of John Pennekamp, Coral Reef State Park, and Dagny Johnson, Key Largo Hamlet Botanical Spring Park raise funds for special educational and environmental projects. They have raised lots and lots of money so far, just in their 5 years. They're 5 years old now, putting new buoys up at the reef. They have got a coral cam that you can go online and see live footage at the reef. They are working on getting us a new marine themed playground in the park, a boardwalk. Those of you who know Dagny Johnson, there's a place where the trail gets wet by high tide. They're working on getting a boardwalk there and many other projects. So if you're interested in joining, talk to me, but also we happen to have our president here tonight. Ann Helmers is in the front row here, so you can talk to her if you're interested in being a friend. Lots of different jobs they have for that too. And if you're a member, it's only $35 a year, and you get special benefits from having that membership at the park. So I want to thank you for your attention tonight, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Your membership is separate from the state parks.
So the state parks is actually you buy an entrance fee pass. So that's different from a membership for the Friends of Pennekamp and Dagny Johnson. That money would get used for projects, you know, after they use it for just their membership stuff. But that's very minimal cost. But yes, so it's a great thing to just join. And what you have access to other things like if we have a lecture series this winter, and so we're planning to do special things for members with that. You get a trip to the park. So if you didn't have the pass, you get a trip to the park once a month. And what else? There's other benefits, I think.
Get to come to like the Halloween family event that we did.
Right. So you can come to our events for free. So there's lots of different things, but the biggest thing is you're being part of the Pennekamp family. So I will, yes, Sally.
Why did it have to change from the abyss to the deep?
So then it never changed. It was called the Christ of the Deep when it was given to the park.
And yet it's in the shallows of 30 feet.
Yes.
That's why, at least
The snort, it's deep for a snort. I'm a snorkeler now. I don't dive anymore, so it's deep. Good one. I would like to let everybody know we are having our annual lecture series this year. It's our 34th contiguous year, and the lectures will start on January 15th and run through March 5th. And there's a great variety of topics. I believe it's going to be in Keys Weekly on their January 2 edition, but I'm trying to get the information out there for folks. And we're going to have our Native Plant Day event on Saturday, January 25th. Or that's a Saturday, I'm pretty sure. Yes.
You mentioned in the beginning of your talk the materials that were used for the statue, the first statue that you presented. Were those same materials used for all of the statues?
Make sure you repeat the question.
Oh, thank you. So Laura Lee is asking me if the same materials were used for each of the statues. Each of the statues is bronze. So not necessarily from that same source, but bronze.
Okay, so they weren't like the metals and all the interesting pieces that were all.
That was collected in Italy. I don't know where they got
three, but definitely the first one.
So maybe it was, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to, because since they were created there and then sent here, maybe it was the same material. Good question.
I like that idea.
I'll have to dig further for the answer to that.
Military metals or the marine metals and things like that.
Well, also like religious metals. I mean, everybody who lived there wanted to be part of this.
Yeah.
It's really a community thing. So it's kind of neat that it started as a community thing in Italy and it's become a community thing here in Key Largo too. And those of you who live here know we have a wonderful community here of people that care about each other and care about the environment. And I love being a part of it. Yes, Sally.
There's another nice image of the Christ of the Deep that anybody can see whether they're diving or not. I believe it's the same church that has the statue out front. And if you go around to the north side to the Memory Garden, there's a mural done that depicts the Christ underwater.
Oh,
In our
okay.
waters. It's kind of a neat image.
So Sally is letting us know that at St. Justin Martyr, she believes there's also a mural of the Christ of the Deep on the back wall where the memory is on. Anybody else?
I know we have some on Zoom. Here is Julia.
Okay.
Yes, I had a few questions from Zoom. I also had a couple of comments. Eric Denson, one of our board members, he says his 12th dive was on that statue. He was certified in 1992, and he's also done the one in Grenada. And Robert said he was camping with his parents 40 years ago when the statue was lowered. So, got some cool stories in the Zoom chat tonight. And my question was from Tasha. She wanted to know the name and location of the church with the statue out front.
Hi, Tasha. Thanks for your question. Tasha's my coworker. She's a ranger. And the church is mile marker 106 on the base side. It's a beautiful church. If you've ever been into the sanctuary, it opens up and you see nature in the back. It's really a beautiful church. And they usually have midnight Christmas mass, since it's Christmas time.
My question is, at what point did they decide don't clean the statue? And what was the thought behind that?
So Lisa's question is, at what point did they decide don't clean the statue? I think and I don't know, this is speculation. My thought is that you're leaving nature to do what it wants. If you're scraping it, then you're kind of spreading detritus and you don't know what you're spreading, and humans are touching it. And I don't know. I'm thinking that it was thought that not to be environmentally good.
Do you think that came with sanctuary or Pennekamp? I think it might be more a sanctuary initiative as we learned more science.
I would guess that's true. And the Park Service does care about those things, but very often it's after the sanctuary.
We all learn a lot.
That. Yeah.
As it goes.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah.
And I will say that sometimes you will find things where the park is not aiming things right, or is using the wrong pictures in their publication. Yes, sir.
I would expect there's one more reason. The more they clean it, they're going to lose profile.
So the gentleman commented that the more they clean it, the more they're going to lose parts of the statue that will wear away. It's a good point.
I had one more comment from Zoom from Kay Kaufman. They say they volunteered with you from 07 to 08. I didn't see their first name. And you gave very good advice to not touch fire coral.
That's true. There's fire coral on that statue, so you don't want to touch it. Though I understand that when Gabe came down, Mr. Spataro, who helped get the statue here in the first place, that he put on gloves so that he could have a connection with the statue that we brought here.
Yes, and I think Dive Heart helped bring him down so that he could dive the statue, because I think at that point he was legally blind.
Yes.
Yeah. But that way he could at least experience this.
One more question.
Oh, yeah. We have more.
Since it's now in the sanctuary and not Pennekamp, there was something to do, or I had heard there's something to do with who manages the statue versus who owns it.
That's probably true, but I would have to ask my boss. Because it is in sanctuary water, so we wouldn't be the ones to say, yes, you can clean it, or no, you can't. You'd have to
Or
go to
whatever,
the sanctuary.
whatever has
Yeah,
to be
right.
done with it.
Whatever would be done.
When the time comes,
It's going to have to be a group
Yeah.
decision, just like we're doing. Well, that's happening a lot now. That a lot of agencies are working together on all kinds of issues in the summer keys.
Julie?
Do they have statistics on how many divers and snorkelers have built it? since it's been there?
I am sure that there's some guesstimates out there. I don't have them. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, do they have any statistics on how many people have dove or snorkeled it? I don't know those numbers. I think there might be some guesstimates out there, but I don't have those numbers. It would also be interesting. A lot of people use it as a site to have a wedding.
Yeah.
More weddings.
So there's a lot of weddings there.
Any other questions? And Elena will be around for a little bit, afterwards as we, clean up and put the room back together. But the History of Diving Museum would like to thank you for volunteering your time, coming out. The museum participates in some of your festivals. We collaborate. Yes, we do. And she's a great human. So thank you very much for everything that you do, not only for coming down and your time in the park, allowing you this time to share with us, but
Oh, and I have gotten from my last manager, we have a new manager who's a wonderful human being too, but my last manager called me the park historian, so I've done stuff old school, like collecting all this information, notes and things over the years, but I've also digitized it. So with the help of volunteers. So I'm glad to share any information with people that would like to have it.
And again, for those of you that are here, we're open 362 days a year. We encourage you, if you did not get a chance to see the exhibits tonight, come back other than Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Day, and New Year's Day. See Salvaging the Deep before it closes. Get on our e-blast so you know about our monthly Immerse Yourself programs, our monthly guided tours. In February, we're also going to be doing a fundraiser for Dive Into Art and Music. It's a tribute band with the Jerry Garcia Foundation and Rainbow Full of Sound to continue efforts and educational outreach with kids. So thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you very much.